South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa has called for an end to the war in Ukraine as it impacts millions, including people on the African continent. He made the remarks while meeting with Russian President Vladimir Putin in St. Petersburg. South Africa's President Ramaphosa met with his Russian counterpart Putin as part of a self-declared African peace mission to help end the war in Ukraine. Ramaphosa was accompanied by 6 other African leaders, the presidents of Comoros, Senegal, and Zambia, as well as Egypt's prime minister and top envoys from the Republic of Congo and Uganda. Their mission to Ukraine, the first of its kind by African leaders, comes after other peace initiatives, such as one by China. It carries particular importance for Africa as it relies on food and fertilizer deliveries from Russia and Ukraine. However, the war has impeded exports from the world's most important breadbaskets. Speaking in the Russian city of St. Petersburg, South African President Ramaphosa urged Putin to end Europe's worst armed conflict since World War II. This war must be settled through negotiations and through diplomatic means, said Ramaphosa. He added that his delegation, consisting of 7 African leaders, are here to communicate a very clear message that we would like this war to be ended. We say so because this war is having a negative impact on the African continent and indeed on many other countries around the world, Ramaphosa explained ahead of formal talks with the Russian president. As a continent, we are being negatively affected in terms of our economies, he noted. The African leaders have proposed the escalation of the armed conflict followed by peace negotiations. Russian President Putin told his South African counterpart he is not giving up on negotiations with Ukraine. We welcome our African friends' balanced stance on the Ukraine crisis, Putin said. He added, "Dear friends, we appreciate your interest in resolving the conflict. We immediately responded positively to your proposal to discuss the Ukrainian issue. African leaders are divided over whether Russia should be condemned for invading Ukraine, and the United States has expressed doubts over South Africa's neutrality, saying it secretly provided weapons and ammunition to Russia in December. South Africa's president has said he is investigating the allegations." Before they arrived in Russia, the African leaders visited Ukraine, where they met Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. He urged the African leaders to help enable Russia's freeing of political prisoners, including from Ukraine's Crimea Peninsula, which Moscow annexed in 2014. Please ask them to release the political prisoners they have been holding since 2014. These are our Crimean people and many, many other people, Zelensky added. Would you please ask Russia to free the political prisoners? It seems to me this will be an important result of your mission of your roadmap, the Ukrainian leader told the African delegates. However, Zelensky has stressed peace talks are only possible between Kiev and Moscow if Russia withdraws from all Ukrainian territory. Ukraine has launched a counter-offensive with deadly battles raging in several areas. Zelensky used Father's Day, celebrated in many countries, to thank who he called strong and brave soldiers fighting Russia's invasion. He made clear he hoped these fathers would return safely from the front lines. The 7 African leaders, the presidents of Comoros, Senegal, South Africa, and Zambia, as well as Egypt's prime minister and top envoys from the Republic of Congo and Uganda, visited Ukraine on Friday to try to help end the nearly 16-month-old war. The African leaders then traveled to St. Petersburg on Saturday to meet with Putin, who was attending Russia's Showpiece International Economic Forum. Details about the delegation's proposals were thin. Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said after the 3-hour meeting that the Africans' peace plan consisted of 10 elements, but was not formulated on paper. The peace initiative proposed by African countries is very difficult to implement, difficult to compare positions, Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov said. But President Putin has shown interest in considering it. He spoke about our position. Not all provisions can be correlated with the main elements of our position, but this does not mean that we do not need to continue working, Peskov said. The main conclusion, in my opinion, from today's conversation is that our partners from the African Union have shown an understanding of the true causes of the crisis that was created by the West, and have shown an understanding that it is necessary to get out of this situation on the basis of addressing these underlying causes, Lavrov said. Russia says that it was effectively forced to send troops into Ukraine because it was threatened by Ukraine's desire to join NATO and by the country's support from the United States and Western Europe. Speaking at the Economic Forum on Friday, Putin declared that the first Russian tactical nuclear weapons have been deployed to Belarus, describing the move as a deterrent against Western efforts to defeat Russia in Ukraine. He previously said that the deployment would begin in July. Asked if he could order the use of battlefield nuclear weapons in Ukraine, Putin said that there was no need for that, but noted that Moscow could use its nuclear arsenals in case of a threat to the Russian statehood. In that case, we will certainly use all the means that the Russian state has. There should be no doubt about that, he said. The mission to Ukraine, the first of its kind by African leaders, comes in the wake of other peace initiatives, such as one by China, and carries particular importance for Africa, which relies on food and fertilizer deliveries from Russia and Ukraine. The war has impeded exports from one of the world's most important breadbaskets. This conflict is affecting Africa negatively, South African President Cyril Ramaphosa said at a news conference alongside Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky and 4 other African leaders after their closed-door talks on Friday. Ramaphosa and others acknowledged the intensity of the hostilities, but insisted all wars must come to an end and emphasized their willingness to help expedite that. I do believe that Ukrainians feel that they must fight and not give up. The road to peace is very hard, he said, adding that there is a need to bring this conflict to an end sooner rather than later. The delegation, including Presidents Macky Sall of Senegal and Hakainde Hichilema of Zambia, represent a cross-section of African views on the war. South Africa, Senegal, and Uganda have avoided censuring Moscow over the conflict, while Egypt, Zambia, and Comoros voted against Russia last year in a UN General Assembly resolution condemning Moscow's invasion. Many African nations have long had close ties with Moscow, dating back to the Cold War when the Soviet Union supported their anti-colonial struggles. Speaking during Friday's news conference, Comoros President Azali Assoumani floated the idea of a roadmap to peace, prompting questions from Zelensky, who sought a clarification and insisted he didn't want any surprises from their visit with Putin. Chances for peace talks look dim as Ukraine and Russia take sharply different stands. Ukraine demands that Russia withdraws its troops from all its occupied territories as a condition for peace talks. The Kremlin, in turn, wants Ukraine to recognize the Crimean Peninsula, which Moscow illegally annexed from Ukraine in 2014, as part of Russia and acknowledge other land gains it has made. China presented its own peace proposal at the end of February. Ukraine and its allies largely dismissed the plan, as the warring sides looked no closer to a ceasefire. The African peace mission comes as Ukraine launches a counteroffensive to dislodge the Kremlin's forces from occupied areas, using Western-supplied advanced weapons in attacks in several sections of more than the 1,000-kilometer, 600-mile front line. In the village of Blehodin, taken by Ukrainian forces in the counteroffensive 6 days ago, soldiers said they have orders to keep advancing and not retreat, indicating long, grueling battles ahead in the direction where Russians have built up dense lines of fortifications. Morale is really strong because the guys know they're moving forward to liberate their lands, said a Ukrainian soldier with the call sign Skripal violinist. We have an order not to retreat and to move forward, so we're trying. Village roads are punctured with craters, buildings are caved in, and bullet holes peppered nearly every residence. Inside a cultural center, a Ukrainian commander with the call sign Lermontov said that they'd captured many Russian soldiers during the liberation of the village and showed journalists 4 bodies whom he said were Russian fighters who had been recruited from prisons. That's where we wrap things up for the time being. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video.